Hello guys and welcome to another video of Miss German Let's Talk. Here we dive into the wildest, funniest, and most darkest Reddit stories that we can potentially find on the internet. So grab a drink, sit back, and let's get right into today's episode. So this is part 2 of my first video that I posted, who have lived in a haunted house and what are your most unexplainable paranormal experiences. So that Reddit comment got like 20,000 replies, and we have so much more to dig in. And I just want to continue with that one second part that we're having. And if you like in that video and I see you guys like that, I will continue. If not, we're doing something else. Let's get right into it. So, my grandfather had a similar story to your first ones. So, he wasn't bad reading before going to sleep, and he saw my grandmother, his wife, walk past the bedroom in a nightgown. He thought it was odd because she never wears a nightgown. A couple minutes later, she walked in the room from the same side of the hallway that she walked from earlier and got in bed. He asked why she changed into those clothes out of her nightgown right before bed. She said, "Hun, I don't wear nightgowns." The other story he told me was a computer they had that in the middle of a large circular table in the basement. They heard a big crash from the basement and naturally ran down to check it out. The computer was on the floor, broken. To this day, he insists it could not have fallen on its own, and it was in the middle of the table. So just for some guys who have not watched part 1, so the last story that we had at the very end of part 1 was about a young user who had lived before in a haunted house, and he had a whole list of explanations because he'll probably think he lived with a spirit that was a doppelganger. So what is a doppelganger? It's like apparently a spirit that takes the form of the people who live in that house and does some crazy shit. And then people are like, "Oh, you've been in that place. I just saw you." And then the real person walks in and be like, "I've never been there." So that is a doppelganger. And maybe let's see if we find other people who had similar experiences. We have here one Reddit user who says, "When I was younger, my parents would frequently go run errands in the neighborhood city and be gone most of the day from morning to night. Our living room was in a spot where you have to walk through it to get from the back door to reach either the front door of my parents' room. You would walk between the couch and the TV while doing so. So I was home alone, and my dad came through the back door, walked in front of me as he crossed the room and entered his and my mom's room. Then he came back out, walked across my field of vision once again, and left through the back door. He didn't look at me, look at the TV, or really do anything besides walk across the room in both directions. When I asked him what he came for, or if he forgot something, he honestly had no clue what I was talking about. They were an hour and a half away. Coming home for something they forgot would have not made much sense. He was also wearing different clothes when I spoke with him compared when I saw him earlier. Such a strange experience, and I only saw it once in my lifetime." Well, guys. I don't know what's going on with the doppelgangers. It doesn't have, there was one comment that I read at the end of the video that I saw saying it doesn't have to be a doppelganger spirit, but it can also be just like a glitch from two dimensions. If we already talk about ghosts, let's talk about this too. It could be a glitch between dimensions and we actually have parallel universe, but this is just like some kind of conspiracy theories as well as the ones with the ghosts that we're having here. But I'd say let me know what you think about it in the comments, and we start with the next haunted house story. So one user is writing down a lady who had two husbands die on her in the same room. A lady who had two husbands die on her in the same room. All right, that's the house my dad decided to buy. Of course he did. The first one hung himself from the rafter in the garage, and the second one fell ill and died in his bed in the basement. I lived in the basement room, of course you did, often just felt like I was being watched all the time. The bedroom in the basement had a secret storage room behind a bookshelf with a locking latch. I would always wake up to find the door wide open. It happened so often that I would wake up cold and routinely got shut and locked the latch of the door in the middle of the night. Why do you get up and do this in the first place? Like, why is it open in the first place? You know, like, wouldn't you be worried that there's actually someone who enters and goes in and out of your room? Let's be honest, it's in the basement, so there can be like a tunnel or something you don't know about. So, for the longest time, I thought it was my dad or stepbrother messing with me, but it wasn't. My stepbrother now occupies that room, and he says it still happens to him, and that he's even seen it open its one time. There are no air vents or anything, so I ruled it out as wind. If there is no air wind, why did you rule it out as wind? No, that doesn't make sense. Also, in the garage, I always see light coming from under the door through the crack, only to open the door to pitch black. I've heard sounds coming from the garage, only to find saw blades clanging together and slightly rotating in their place on the whole storage wall. Didn't think anything of it at first, but when I find shit moving on one wharf and one occasion, it makes you look over your shoulder at the raft and wonder. Well, it's always, you guys, the old houses that we have, or the houses in where people die in. I'll be honest, I'm just gonna tell my little story that I have, because when I grew up, and I grew up in a little house in a little village with like 60 people, very outside of like any kind of construction, school, or living. There were only old people living in that place where I was living and growing up. I don't know what my parents thought. It was like they saw the price of the house and were like, all right, let's do it. And it was like in the 90s back then. So a house didn't cost like freaking $500,000. And they bought it for, I think, like 20,000, which was insane for the kind of like house that we got back in the time. And I remember that my dad used to tell me story about this girl called Mary that when I was a child, was seeing apparently, and I was playing, and every time he come down the garden where Mary, the girl who died in the garden where I was playing, and I was telling, oh, do you see Mary? And my dad was like, what the fuck are you talking about? And apparently, I've played. I don't remember this at all. I've played with that girl. I don't know anything. I just know that she died, of course, because of her stroke. And my neighbor, who was at that time alive when I was still a little girl, told me that she had a stroke and she died. And for return for us getting the house at this very, very low price, uh, she she had like a tomb that was like next to the house, literally, because we had a Catholic church next to our house, and there she was, and we had to take care of her grave. What we are still doing, I don't remember anything of this. Honestly, I don't know if that's even true, but that was one of the creepy stories. And I gotta say, and a lot of people and friends that I have that come to visit in my house now that I'm older and I'm not living there anymore, but occasionally when I have old friends coming over and I'm at the house back there in my family house, they're like telling me after years, you have a very, very strange house. You have a very weird, and it seems dark, and it is not a weird house, but it's like just an old house. And I think that is what creeps the people out, because it's an old house that stayed there, and it was renovated after the Second World War, but it was a house that stayed longer than the First World War even began. So, and that lady just died in there, and people think that it's crazy. And but anyways, that was my story. Let's start with another Reddit story that we're having here. So, I lived in a house for about 5 years that was haunted, but not in a malicious way, in a shitty roommate kind of way. Oh, okay. That kind of roommate who's like probably getting on your nerves, but like, you know, that kind of roommate that is a ghost that doesn't pay rent. Yeah, I get that. I'd come home to the windows on the second floor being open when it was raining. Two food containers being open in the fridge that hadn't been touched. The worst was the ghost hated clocks. She hated them. I had an antique cuckoo clocks. Cuckoo. Sorry, guys. That had worked for over 50 years that would just never stop. Brand new wall clocks that ate through batteries like it was candy. My watch ended up on the floor one morning. The crystal shattered, even thought I knew I slept with it on it. The one that pissed me off the most was I got a brand new Kit Kat clock for Christmas and the bitch threw it off the wall. I was cooking and out of the corner of my eyes saw the cat freaking fly, turned around it and it across the kitchen broken. It was brand new. Man, she was a bee. Well, guys, that was kind of my favorite one because I can't sleep with clocks in my room too. Maybe she couldn't either. And with that said, guys, that's it for today's videos, ladies and gentlemen. So I hope you liked today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, don't forget to like and subscribe my channel. And I'll be back with some more crazy Reddit stories. See you next time. Bye. Bye.